If you're part of my class, you know that I've washed my hands and I am dehydrating the nail plate with my blue squares and acetone. I'm taking my cuticle pusher, this one's made by OPI, and I'm pushing back that dead skin, the cuticle, with purposeful motions. I find this works best to get any cuticle out of the way, to get what we used to call that pterygium, that sticky leftover skin that's still on the nail plate. What are we even calling that anymore? Anyway, this gets rid of it. I can scrape it away without hurting my client. It's efficient. My retention is good. And as I say to you guys all the time, it makes that skin that's just white and wavy, the stuff that I want to cut off, just really obvious. It makes it stand up. I know just what's dead and just what's safe to cut away and just what I need to leave behind to keep my body free of infection and to keep my service healthy. This works for me. That's how I roll. I wanted to show how I like to e-file. This is my favorite bit in both shape and grit. A little blue barrel on there and that cone shape. I like a ceramic too. I think it doesn't get as hot as the metal ones. Maybe that's in my head, but if it's in my head, that's good enough. This is my pattern. I'm trying to show you in the camera. It is a little bit awkward doing your nails in front of or over a camera, under a camera, around a camera. But that's a bit my pattern I like to use. I want to show you this nail as I'm filing it and prepping it because it had the most lifting. I'm still going corner to center, even though you see a little bit of back and forth. Anytime I do back and forth motions, they are small and controlled. We're never seesawing. I'm using my acrylic nipper to nip away what is clearly not attached. And I like to double check on the free edge that the seal is still there. I want to make sure I'm kind of using like the middle of my blade and down to see if anything else feels like it's lifting. If I can get the side of that blade right there underneath the product, then that means it's lifting. So I gently sort of feel if I can get a ledge, if I can get it under there. I'm not forcing it. This is a builder gel, so I know that I can get my blade under there safely and nip away something without encouraging more lifting. And then I go in with a controversial 180 grit and smooth it out to my nail. When I get to my nail, I lessen the pressure and I'm using the rounder part of my file to blend in. And I can feel it. I can feel what I'm doing or not doing. I'm doing a responsible etching. I'm not over etching with a 240 and I'm not putting a lot of pressure. As you can see, I add more pressure when I get to the product. I'm beveling, I'm smoothing out, and I'm making sure, again, that the edges are sealed at the free edge, that I can't get my blade under that product a little bit more. My nail plate has a little bit of lifting in that corner, so it does look a little more white in that corner. It's still safe to have an enhancement on. I shouldn't push the length, and I probably shouldn't put acrylics on, but that's what I'm doing. Smooth out where you've nipped. Again, if there was any lifting on that free edge, that's why I keep going back. If there was any more lifting than this, I would just soak it off and start over. But that is a little bit of a fragile nail of mine, and I know it behooves me best to just blend it out carefully and thoroughly to prep it safely for me. I'm moving on to the next nail. Dry brushing. When you dry brush, I want you to use the bristles to kind of clean out from underneath that cuticle you just pushed back and go down in a downwards motion. Get rid of the debris. Don't be pushing it into the cuticle. And there again, I'm using my blade. I'm going in level to the nail. I'm not going in at a stabbing motion. I just want to see if I can get underneath that part with my blade, and it doesn't look like I can, so I move on with my life. Checking that free edge one more time because, again, I know it looks discolored. It looks like it's lifting. It's giving that bent plastic look that I talk about when we talk about lifting and prepping. But that's mostly because, again, I've got some lifting underneath that nail from just wearing my enhancements a little too long sometimes. I'm pushing back with the edge of my file as I do, wherever I see I might need to. Again, I already dry brushed. And then I love No Lift Primer. I do. I'm going to, and I already did the pinky. It was out of frame, so I edited it out. But this is one singular dip that I'm going through all my nails with. And I have wiped that brush off on the lid at that. I do not overuse this. When I go back there, I'm barely picking up on what is on the edge of that lid. I always want to stop short of that live skin because it has the viscosity of water. It is going to bleed down to the skin, and what is meant for the horn is not meant for the flesh. So keep it on the nail. When you put primer on, if it doesn't look flush like that, if any part of it is still really white, then you know you have lifting. Primer will tell on you. It will let you know that you haven't properly prepped that nail. You haven't gotten rid of what's lifting. You haven't filed it flush. You haven't blended. So primer is your friend. Use it responsibly. It is making little etches, is my argument, into the nail so that your acrylic has something to hang on to. Going over some forms. You saw that motion. I like to take apart the sticker at the bottom. It is usually a 4-fingered operation when I put on a form. I am bending it, loosening it up in the middle. And when I am putting it on a client, I have the opportunity to be looking down the barrel to make sure that it is flush to the free edge and there's no ledge created. I like to barely tap in the middle and then adjust on the way down, because as you go to adjust the end of that form, it usually creates more of an arch and will fill in that free edge space. If it doesn't, if you didn't like it, which that one's usually a little funky, I want to show you a couple things forms can do. That middle piece, this part is flat for a reason. You can place it right there and move on, but I find that makes it a little too stiff. So I like to take my stork shears and just barely cut out the corners, and I'm going for just straight across, just like it would have done if I put the sticker in the middle. And I know that works fantastic for a lot of people. Yeehaw for thinking of the design. It makes that form a little too stiff for me. I don't like it. So bendy, bendy. Again, you see where it's my 4 fingertips. And I'm putting this on myself, so it's a little bit different motion, but yet similar. I'm using my other finger to sort of keep that one tab in place, and I'm realizing I'm out of frame. Good for me. Adjust. Get it under that free edge as tight as it can be without hurting that hyponychium. Now, look, my grid is a little wonky, and I'm a pro, and I can deal with that. But if that really bugs you, adjust it. I barely tap those sides there to put it in place, and my first pinch is at the free edge. Don't pinch it so hard that you've created a funky shape in your form. This should be a soft curve, and you should look down that barrel, tap it in place, make sure it's comfortable and tight under there, make sure your form isn't going up or down, and then secure it closer to the knuckle. And then, rinse and repeat. Do that 9 more times. For most clients, I like to just do one hand at a time because forms shift a little bit and it just seems to be more efficient to do one hand at a time for them. I am applying this now in front of a heater with purpose, so I can show you a couple acrylic beads that I would absolutely abandon. I like to do the twirl, make sure that my bristles are all primed. My brush is golden. I like to lay on the nail plate. No, I was fighting it right away. It wasn't letting me move it. It wasn't letting me drop it to the form. That's too dry. I did another bounce, and I can tell by the way it's not moving on the brush at all. And again, the fact I'm standing in front of my heater. Bead. Get rid of it. Abandon. I folded my blue towel, got the brush a little wetter. A bounce. I can tell by the fluidity already. It's going to let me drop it onto the nail plate. It's going to let me tell it where to go. I like to wipe my brush off a lot and work with things wet. I just do. It works for me. I want to try to create it flush to the nail plate, and I'm starting to create the shape of my free edge. That's the intent and purpose of the first bead that I lay down on a full sculptured nail. If my bead is long enough to carry it out to the shape of the whole tip, great. In this case, I am working with my non-dominant hand in front of a heater, but the point here is to not worry about getting this done in 1 bead, 2 beads, 3 beads. This is about having product control. It's about making sure you're looking down the barrel of the nail, the sides of the nail. Use the belly of the brush to flatten and move the product. Try to be parallel with the nail plate as much as you can be. When you're working on other people, have their nail facing down so it's not flooding their nail. I'm shaping that free edge. I'm considering that shallow rainbow that I want. And I'm going in with the smallest and wettest bead, taking it down by the cuticle. Remember, stop short of the cuticle because it will bleed out. This is going to be the wettest bead. So it's going to want to make contact with that skin anyway. Don't help it. Aim it in the right direction, and both in the way that you lay it down and the way that you angle your client's hand. Smooth it out. This is a wet brush that I'm just smoothing and using really the belly of my acrylic brush to create that shape that I want. Creating one more tiny little bead to fill in where I can see it has a divot.